Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another tea time. This is a special tea time. I have a friend on with me who's moving from the procurement world into the land of entrepreneurship. I am so excited for you to meet her today. Leana, it's a pleasure as always.
So excited to be here.
We actually met in person a couple of weeks ago, but I've known her for now. I've had the pleasure of working with you for probably 4 months now, 4 or 5 months. And what she is building is absolutely amazing with Valiant Strategies. So I cannot wait for all of you to learn more about her and her new company here on Tea Time today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to chat with you and get to know everyone else better. Hopefully, they engage in the comments and we can have a
Yes.
good conversation.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start with the basics. You want to introduce yourself to everyone that's watching today?
Oh my goodness. How do I describe myself? I'm Leanna. I'd like to think that I'm just, a normal down home down home girl from the village in Trinidad and Tobago. But of course it extends more than that. And you want to know about my career. So I worked in the Canadian public sector like forever and a day, it seems like. How long did I work there? Since about 2005, and after about 17 years working for the public sector and specifically procurement, I decided to make my exit. And I didn't go far. I actually started working with the public sector as my client. But I also started working with some incredible companies who are looking to sell into government. They have valuable services, really valuable products, and sometimes they need a little bit of tweaking to help refine and communicate their value proposition a bit better to the government. So that's the vast majority of what I do.
Oh my goodness. And it's such an incredible positioning going from procurement professional through and through. And we'll go into a little bit more depth of your background here in a second. But this expertise that you bring to the table, and then you're flipping it on its head and saying, I can help people who are selling into governments do it more effectively based off of your background. And it is so incredible what you're building at Valiant. So, let's talk though first about not everyone makes the jump from procurement, either public or private sector, into building your own company. So let's talk about what inspired you to make that transition.
People always get a little bit surprised when I tell them why.
Hmm.
It all goes back to two pieces of advice I received throughout my career. One pretty early on, when I was just a college kid, trying to, just work part-time, make money, go to school. And then the other was more towards the time when I decided to start thinking out the box and say, what other opportunities lie? One was someone said we need more strong women out there.
Yeah.
We need more strong women in the workplace, those who are looking to just try new things, have a seat at the table, make their voice be heard. So I that stuck with me since I was 21 years old. And the other was this was coming from a woman, and funny enough, the other piece of advice also came from a woman who said, you have to look at the organization as if it's the dinner table. And if you don't see a seat for yourself at the table, or you feel like you can't fit in a really on a really tiny chair, you know how you have like you kind of stick chairs in at the
Oh yeah.
side and
Oh yeah.
make everyone fit in around the Thanksgiving dinner table. If you can't see yourself there or sitting there comfortably, then there really is no seat for you. And it's time to move on. It's
Yeah.
time to move house, so to speak. And what I had found over the years is that as I was getting more and more incredible experience taking on bigger dollar value projects, moving into the IT category, that was huge. I felt like I had plateaued because I was a category specialist running the procurement process end to end. There
Mhm.
isn't much creativity outside of that. there isn't much ability for you to say, let me think outside the box. And particularly when it's public sector procurement,
Yeah.
you're really hard coded into those processes. So I started to feel like I wasn't learning anything new, which was crazy.
Yeah.
So what did I do? I said, let me see if I can take on something on the side. That didn't really happen because thankfully opportunity started to present itself and I decided to just simply leave. And well, here I am. This has been the fastest year of my entire life expanding Valiant Strategies. And yeah, I'm doing it with more of an entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that's where I found the huge challenge was learning how to be a business owner.
And it's been fascinating to see you grow over the last 4 months into that role, right? You've probably been on that journey much longer than 4 months, but just to see you in the last 4 or 5 months and how you are imagining the possibilities of where Valiant can go, even when you approached me and you're like, I have the name. And then when the name and the logo came together, just to see like that be so personal to you and reflect so much of the value that you want to bring into the world, it was fun to be part of. So, and I can't wait for a lot of the other people watching today and beyond for them to learn more about the value you can bring. So, but I'm curious. So you talked about, moving from public procurement into the world of entrepreneurship. But how does your background really influence what you're doing with Valiant and how you can bring value to the companies that use your services?
I think it actually, my background complements it very well because when we look at procurement in the public sector, it's all about presenting opportunities. Um, and in order to do that, you have to look a lot at stakeholders and define needs and look for solutions and things like that. And working with vendors throughout every procurement, you get a lot of feedback. And so much of what you do is learning how to communicate. So
Yeah,
by the time I left the public sector, I think I had a really great grasp on how to communicate. Learn who your audience is, their different personalities, communication styles, especially in this digital age. You know, some are a little bit more tech savvy than others. So I think just knowing the basics, people actually think it's a lot more complicated than it really is. There is something to be said for how to build a relationship with somebody else, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It's simple. It's stick to the facts, treat each other well. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that I took with me was how to be able to talk to people.
yeah. And you've been able to develop that skill and you on the procurement side, right? So you were seeing what suppliers were submitting to these different government entities, we'll just say it that way, but you saw it from all different levels of government. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, I actually worked at the municipal level at the city of Toronto. That's where I got my start in divisional purchasing. Then I moved into being a buyer at the corporate level. So most of my career has been at the corporate enterprise level. So I was really fortunate to be able to get a holistic view of how a government runs,
Yeah.
from standing committees to city council. And I worked my way up from there. I started working with the province of Ontario, then moved over to the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, which is a provincial agency. Um, so I think like that's been helpful is to be able to work with a larger and larger team every
Yeah.
single time. Yeah, you
Right.
learn how to manage stakeholders quite quickly. But the beauty of that is that you really see how different departments across an organization come together.
Yeah, absolutely. And make decisions on purchasing, right? Which suppliers are
Absolutely.
selecting, et cetera.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
every department has their own distinct needs, but at the same time, we all come together from an indirect standpoint because we need the same things in order to be able to run the business, so to speak.
Absolutely. So when we think about like your target market for Valiant Strategies, so you can help support someone who's selling into a county, like if we use US terms, right? A county level, a city level, all the way up through like the federal government level, because you've had experience on the opposite side, right? Like you know what it takes to become a supplier at each of those different levels.
Absolutely, and how to navigate all the nuances of those of the procurement process.
Yeah.
People have to remember that the principles of public sector procurement are the same no matter which way you go.
Mhm.
There may be slight differences, but everyone has a policy. Everyone's governed by legislation. We're all doing the same thing, so
Yeah.
it's not as intimidating as you may think, but you do need someone who is well versed on those specific nuances that I mentioned.
Okay, so I have a question for you because I most of my career has been in like large Fortune 500 companies in the procurement world, so never really into the government area, if you will. But I can imagine that it's a complicated process, right? For a supplier to go through. It might be consistent on the government, but it's a little bit more regulated, nuanced, et cetera. Where do you find suppliers usually fall down in that process? Like where are those problem areas, if you will?
This may sound a bit crazy, but it's actually terminology.
Ah,
The words you
okay.
speak mean different things. So a lot of suppliers call everything a tender. And it's
Yeah.
actually not that simple, but we recognize that. We try and educate along the way. So it's definitely the language we speak, and also the frustrations by being bound by a process that is also very sequential in nature. We don't really do a whole lot of agile procurement in the public sector. It's very much waterfall. Um, type of methodology. So I think and I hear and I see and I don't disagree that the process is very long and tedious. And I know that suppliers, they just want to show us, what they can do, but they feel very bogged down by the number of steps that are required to get through the process and how to also communicate on paper. So your written proposal is a huge piece of the pie. A lot of suppliers are really good in the demo presentation interview stage, but they fall short at the written stage. So you need to understand how criteria works in the public sector. That is the thing that we use to be able to evaluate your proposals. So it's definitely the process itself, for sure.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about how you help companies who are selling into the various government agencies. So what services does Valiant Strategies provide to those companies?
I would say I have like four key areas. It's as simple as providing you a resource hub or a space to grow the community. That's what I call the arsenal. There's a training and an education component. So that's if you want to learn how to either be a better procurement professional, how to do more complex procurement, how to project manage your procurements, or even if you want to have your sales teams learn how to navigate the public sector procurement process, I can do that for you. And then I also have my advisory services and embedded consulting. So if you want to hold a pen on your proposal and you just need a few pointers here and there on how to write a better proposal or navigate through the process, I can do that for you. Or I can support you from end to end. Write your proposal, attend your demos and presentations. I've really designed my services to be flexible and responsive to market needs. And it's my firm view that I should be able to fit into your organization seamlessly as compared to you hiring me, and I expect you to fit your organization into how I like to do things.
Right. I love that you have just these various different levels. So if somebody just wants to work with you on just getting information, templates, that type of stuff, they can go through the arsenal. You can do training, you can do advisory, and then you could do like everything nuts to bolts. If you need someone to actually literally do the work, you could provide that too. So you're hitting at all different levels of support, which is fantastic.
Yes, and fortunately for me, I mean, I know the organizations I work with would say, well, thankfully we've been able to get a resource such as myself to help support them on their procurement journey. But I've been fortunate to work with organizations from startups to larger, more established companies, and to really understand where the pain points lie in the private sector. So it's been a really, really cool experience for me along the way.
What markets do you support? So I know you're obviously from your background, you are from Canada, but what areas of the world do you help or do you specialize in?
Particularly the United States and the Caribbean. Those are
Okay.
very, very key markets for me. Understandably so, just given,
Your
the
background.
political climate, the background, the
Yes.
political climate. I am a Caribbean girl, just in case you haven't noticed. I wear my Trinidad and Tobago heritage with such pride. But those are key areas for me, and especially since it aligns well with my experience working at the municipal, which would be like your county level, all the way
Yeah,
up to the federal level.
love that. Okay. You you're absolutely amazing. Like I cannot wait to see where Valiant Strategies goes in the marketplace and how many people, how many salespeople you help. Think about this, like the investment that they would make in you if they can land even just one contract with the government. And those contracts are usually, multi-year, very, very well reliable contracts, right? In all things considered, that is well worth the investment. Even if they can land just one deal, you return very, very nicely on your services. So cannot wait to see who you can help to get those the contracts in place and win more deals. So with that said, though, I'm curious too because I've just from chatting with you and seeing you in New York, a lot of people approach you about the decision you made, right? Like, not only are you building this beautiful business, but you took a big risk on yourself, leaving a quote unquote corporate job into the entrepreneurship realm. So, if you had advice, if someone's listening today and they're like, I want to be her, like, I want to do the same thing, what advice would you give that individual to make that leap?
Well, first of all, I hope anyone that looks at me and says, I want to be her, remembers that you're valuable yourself. So I hope that you want to
Yes.
be a better version of yourself.
Oh,
But if
it's
you
so wise.
want to be like me, so to speak, one of the questions I asked myself was, how can I serve? That is such a core non-negotiable aspect of what I do is how can I give back? And if you know me personally, that is the one thing you will learn about me immediately is how do I leave people, places, and things better than I first met them. So I think it's no surprise that I still have a focus on public sector because that is somewhere where you can really see the value of the work that you do play out. Granted, it is kind of a thankless job at times. People think you're lazy, you don't do anything, you're just paper pushers. That's not it. But if it's a great place to have selfless service. So that was one thing I looked at. I also looked at my community. I looked at who could support me on this entrepreneurial journey. I looked at what connections I had made so far, who I could partner with, who I could learn from, who could become a mentor, hint, hint, um, and who would constantly keep me feeling challenged and supported in a balanced way. And I also looked at my transferable skills. So I mentioned before being able to build relationships and communicate, knowing the procurement principles. So these are things that I looked at that I could use as a foundation in order to grow my consultancy from now until like X number of years into the future. It's not only about learning new things
Yeah.
and growing with the times. It's about knowing what you already or recognizing what you already know and what can you already do and do it well. Like don't forget about your foundation, what brought you to this point in the first place.
Mm,
And
I, yeah, go ahead.
the other thing I learned was you need to niche down. I started out wanting to do all these things, and right now I'm doing this. And
Yes.
that keeps me very busy. It's okay to niche down because when you niche down, you recognize very quickly what is realistic. And then you can see very quickly how you can take a step to the right and step to the left, and you build your and grow your network and bring in more opportunities that way.
Ooh, I love that. I was I was thinking about the skill set, right? What you bring to the table. Like your rich history and your experience adds such value to your clients. And that's why I went on the journey at Wonder, right? I knew change and we could see that opportunity in the marketplace. And you're like, I want to go do that. Like that's the cool part about entrepreneurship is that you can bring a skill set to the table and you can serve others through your experiences, which is exactly what you're doing at Valiant, right? Like that is so cool that you're able to match that together.
Well, I mean, I'd also like to give credit to other people. I had my own call to action given to me as well. It wasn't about me thinking what I can do.
Mhm.
I heard for a good few years on end, Leanna, you need to you need to take a step away from what you're doing. You're capable of more. You should
Yeah.
be teaching what it is you know because you've already mastered this. So I think other people would benefit from what you can do. So it took me a good long time, you know. I've got like a real great healthy dose of imposter syndrome. So it took me a while, but
Uh,
I'm certainly glad I got, enough swift kicks that got me going on this journey.
well, that and it was fun to meet you in New York for the first time face to face. Not only did we get to meet, but you got to be on stage at a Women in Procurement event, facing that imposter syndrome one on one, right? Or one to many, maybe if you want to look at it that way. But I thought the funniest part was that one of the women in the room, and I swear I did not plant this question, but like asked the question about imposter syndrome to the panel, which I was like, it's amazing when you put yourself out there in new situations and you challenge yourself, how it can kind of come back like full circle. And there you were giving advice to women in the room about imposter syndrome, something that you face personally. It was just one of those amazing moments.
It was so amazing. And I had never felt more supported myself by not only that particular group, but just over the weekend, I was actually watching an interview with the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern,
Yeah.
who talks about imposter syndrome heavily. And I'm like, the former prime minister has imposter syndrome. She freaks out every day and she ran an entire country. My God, I could run my own consultancy.
Yes, you can. You can. And I think I mentioned this and then we've talked about it before, but I always look at it like syndrome shows up when you are pushing yourself to do something big, right? Like
Yes.
when you're pushing yourself to the next level, when you're doing something that's uncomfortable. And I always welcome the imposter syndrome, as horrible as that sounds, right? Like you don't want that hanging around, but it's just something that happens, right? But I always look at it as like, ooh, hi, my lovely friend. I am doing something big.
Exactly. And what I've learned with my imposter syndrome, and especially because it's like it takes a great hold of me, is it's telling me that I'm ready to do something. It's like
Yes.
that, it's the nag.
Yeah.
It's less about the fear that you can't do it and just the glaring reminder that you no longer have the seat at the table that you thought you did. It's time to move on.
Yeah, you're going for the throne, not just the seat.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so with that said, how do if there are people who are looking to make the change from what they're doing today into the entrepreneurial world, or if they are curious about your Valiant Strategies services that we went over today, how do they get in contact with you?
You can get a hold of me. If you're on LinkedIn, you can send me a DM. But I would say the best way is just to head up my website. It's www.valiantstrategies.co. That's co, not com.
Yeah.
Or you can send me an email at leana@leanamaharaj.com. So Leana at leanamaharaj.com, and we can start the conversation that way. I've tried to make myself really accessible to people who want to have a chat, so you can expect to hear from me really quickly if you reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on this very special tea time with me today. If you loved this video, we publish tea time videos very frequently. We not only highlight conversations like this one today, but we also talk about change management, change leadership, and procurement related topics. So if you love those topics and love the conversation today, hit the subscribe and like button. We would like to be engaged with you with future videos that we might be publishing. So Leana, thank you so much for today. And I know you're going to do amazing things with Valiant Strategies. So I'm love being a little part of your journey and cheering you on over here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to connecting with each of you out there.
All right. Thank you.